All right, so took us a few more videos to get going with the writing of this, but I think it was very important that we really pace ourselves a little bit more challenging language, um, older writing, and I probably had a few more disclaimers and asides and interludes. But yeah, so let's start writing the body. So our thesis is right here. We can even put it in, even highlight it. All right, so right here, 10 cents are wrong for one who writes amiss. Let's just write that one. So we'll do this in order, except for the beginning and the end. We'll make those in the end, and we'll comment that Alexander Pope even has bookends. The beginning of the part one and the end of part two, and that's further evidence that suggests that he wants that image of bad critic, better poet, to be in the reader's head. So so here's, so 10 cents are wrong for one who writes amiss. Or we can call it a poem, we can call it the piece, we can call it the editorial, we can call it the critique, but we want to introduce that word critique in the intro, that he gives a critique of the critic. But we can use different words to refer to an essay on criticism, or early on in the essay. Okay, earlier on in the poem, Pope one 6. Pope laments of critics in general as compared to poets in general. We haven't used that phrase in general in the intro. I want the intro to be solid, and not, I just want it to be tight and taut. So now in the beginning of the body, I'm saying critics in general as opposed to poets in general. I'd rather say that instead of critics as compared to poets. So, all right, let's see. And maybe we'll revise it, but I think it fits, it sounds good, it rolls off the tongue. Early in the poem in line 6. Early on in the poem in line 6. Even early in the poem. Even in the poem's first stanza. No, right from the in line 6, he writes. So it's very generic. You could say he relays, he explains, he critiques, he assays. A lot of synonyms there, but it's okay to say he writes. 10 cents are wrong for one who writes amiss. is that this line can potentially be read in at least two distinct ways. Now, we already had a list, occupations, the writer and the critic, number one, number two. So I kind of don't want to do it. I kind of don't want to do that. I kind of don't want to do that. So you know what that does? That makes me want to either move this to the end of the poem, or the end of the essay, or not have a list. At least two distinct ways. One way, a way to interpret with both ways, maligning, minimizing the positive, minimizing the positive aspects of the critic. Let's mention that of the critic. Even more so than the poet. Okay, a little parenthesis. We'll call them critics, we call them writers or poets. One way to read the line, to interpret the line, right? Because we just said read, so now let's say interpret. Let's vary our word choice a little bit. So one way to interpret this line is that Pope might be saying that for every 10 bad book or poem reviews, there is a mere one bad book or poem. And then also remember we're commenting on specific occupations, specific people. So let's use that parallelism in our essay as well. It strengthens it. It really tends to buttress our argument and our thesis. So for every 10 bad book or poem reviews put forth by critics, let's say created by critics. A little bit of alliteration there. Created by critics. There is a mere one bad book or poem written by an author or poet. So let's say a critic. Let's use parallelism, right? A critic and author. We don't need to use a lot of slash. 10 bad. Let's just call them literary reviews. The reviews created? Nah, they're written. So let's just call it written. Written and written. For every 10 bad literary reviews written by a critic, there is a mere one bad book poem written by an author. And then here, we can say 10 censor wrong, right? And then here we can say for one who writes amiss. Another potential way to interpret this line. And again, this might give us some kudos from the teacher, like, oh, that's a good point. You know, you're showing multiple readings and sophisticated analysis. Another way is they might, you know, the teacher might look ill at that and say, oh, well, you're not committing, you're not making one specific argument, one specific point. I think the odds are strong that you're going to get more kudos for that because it shows that you're thinking, you're sophisticated, and you're thinking like, what are multiple ways that the reader can take this? I'm not saying that every time we do this, it's going to get all these plaudits and you know, and increased points. It's on a case-by-case basis, obviously, but I believe that truly that he makes it vague enough that it could either be for every 10 bad reviews or every 10 bad critics. And if we're wrong, we get it, you know, marked down a bit. No, you're kind of wrong there, but nice try, or, you know. But you got to take shots, and that's the thing about writing. There's no right or wrong. Like math or science. I mean, it's just in terms of scholastic math, scholastic science, most problems are going to be right and wrong. This is very subjective. So, but no, you got to take shots. I think this is a good shot, and we're putting it right up front. It also sets us up that right from the poem's opening, Pope starts in and starts maligning the critic more harshly. But I think we saved our strongest weapons, that the bookends for the end. And yeah, so another potential way to interpret this line is that perhaps Pope, a little bit of alliteration, perhaps Pope, might be for every 10 bad literary critics, there is only, right? So instead of saying mere, you could say there is only one bad writer or poet. So let's just say out there. Every 10 bad literature critics out there, there's only one bad writer or poet. It's a little bit colloquial, saying out there, but it seems to flow a little bit better than just for every 10 bad literary critics, there was only one bad writer or poet. Just say out there working, out there doing their thing and working in the real marketplace. He's talking about the real marketplace. I mean, he's writing for so long, you know, he's talking, there are specific critics he's referring to. You know, he's like writing this about. There's like so much passion. He's not just saying this just in general. This is a theory I've been reading about. No, he's swimming in this, whatever this ocean is. And I'm sure a good professor, a good class, you know, if you were talking about this poem, they would talk about this. They would really, really dig. So these first classes are going to mainly focus, I want to call them classes. They're just videos. They're mainly going to focus on just, you know, pure explication, essay writing, and sort of thought process to write a good essay, right? We might put together, I'd like to put together some classes that are more lecture-based, where we can share some of this knowledge, and then we can write the essays together. You know, an example of an essay together, you know, after we do some lectures. But for right now, I really just want to focus on just essay writing practice that's strictly based on the explicit analysis, or the analysis of the works, you know, just the works, nothing outside, just the works. So there was only one bad writer or poet. Yet with either or both, or even both, readings, we can look up synonyms for interpretations. Yet with either or even both readings, Alexander Pope, right? You wouldn't want to call him the poet because that might be vague. We might think it's the poet that we're talking about, the critic versus the poet. So Alexander Pope seems to be using a ratio of 10 to 1, meaning that there are 10, either 10 bad critics. Okay, so now let's use the same order, right? And here again, we're repeating this, but sort of doing it in different words, and it's sort of driving the point home. And let's see how it looks. Sometimes I'll write something and it sounds good when I'm saying it and typing it, and then I'll go, let's change this. So, meaning that there were either 10 bad reviews for every bad book written, or meaning that there are 10 bad critics for every bad author. Let's just put working. 10 bad working critics for every bad working author. I don't like doing all these parentheses, but it still sort of fits. It just reads a little better, especially if the reader's reading fast. Yeah. And then we want to drive the point home, right? In essence, this one line in the first stanza of an essay on criticism clearly seems to evidence Pope's Pope's more aggressive maligning, and we're going to use a synonym here of the critic as opposed to, or compared with. Compared with the author. So you could say 10 bad reviews for every one bad book written. And that's just because of the number, right? 10, 1, 10, 1. So normally you want to say O-N-E, right? But for this, we're trying to show as much parallelism as we can with our writing about the poem, and also just because a lot of the structure, that's really what it's about. It's about critic versus poet. So we want our writing to be very parallel as well. Anyways, hopefully this is helpful, and hopefully it clears up some questions that some folks have, and hopefully it is of help. We'll see you guys at the next video. Okay.